to From the Front Row Fashion Podcast, where style meets soul, where we dive into the stories, strategies, and style behind successful fashion careers. I'm your host, Shanta, and today's guest is Marie P. Anderson. Marie is a trailblazing model, a legendary agent, and an entrepreneur, and a visionary who has helped shape the fashion industry from the inside out. Marie, your impact in the modeling industry has been just really undeniable. So let's just start from the beginning. How did you first get started in modeling, and how did you transition to becoming an agent?
Okay, I began as a model as a child. My mother had been a model in New York before she even met my dad, before the war. That's how long ago it was. So when I was a child and we were living in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and she was a community activist, she was doing what were called style shows, what we now know to be called runway shows. She would put me in those style shows as one of her models, walking down the runway in whatever she wanted me to wear. So that was really how I got the bug for the business, was my mother introducing me to it. And then I would model through my teens, and then I moved to Chicago, was doing freelance modeling there. And that would eventually lead to my becoming the studio manager for one of the top fashion photographers at that time, Stan Malinowski. And I spent 3 years with him, essentially traveling the world, shooting all sorts of gorgeous editorials, including Vogue covers, which gave me the education to become an agent. And so one day Stan came to me, I think it was like around 1979, 80. Anyway, it's hard for me to remember because I'm 67. I have a lot
You look
of
amazing.
Thank you.
We'd never be able to tell.
So Stan came to me one day and he said, Marie, you're spending way too much time with models. I think you're a little off focus for being a studio manager. You should become an agent. So that's how it happened. It didn't even occur to me. I wasn't even thinking forward. I was just kind of doing my job and doing whatever my calling was. And my calling was to help youth and to empower them with information and try to improve their careers, even if I didn't rep them. So I was just doing it already.
So what did the modeling industry look like when you first entered compared to what you see now? How has it changed?
Oh my gosh, we don't have enough time on the podcast to talk about how much has changed. Let me start off with saying, for me, it was something out of a fantasy. It was insanely exciting and glamorous and fun, and it was a smaller industry. Keep in mind, this is pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-AI. So it was a much more coveted, invite-only kind of industry. And so everybody knew everybody. So I started my education with Stan, as I said, there in Chicago. And then he would take me to Italy and to New York. We would go all over. And having that education, working literally with Valentino, the actual designer, on set with models like
so
Beverly
amazing.
Johnson, Iman. Like, I was working with all the top girls. And there in Europe, they weren't all typical blonde hair, blue eyes, super skinny girls. Over in Europe, they tended to be a little more exotic, a little more
diverse.
Yes. And so that education is what I brought into my career as an agent. And at that time, there wasn't that kind of model in Chicago. Chicago was very conservative, not a lot of people of color. Asian models could barely work. It was just a very different world. As much it was glamorous and fun and exciting, it was also very closed,
lacking that diversity and different types of models and from all walks of life.
And so for me, I fought very hard to make that change. And so when I worked for Stewart Talent, which was my first job in the business before we would become Elite Chicago, that's when I had discovered Cindy Crawford, who was a little darker, a little more exotic, a little shapelier. I fell in love with her immediately. And so for me, I wasn't going by traditional Chicago standards. I was going by global standards. So that's different, drastically different. And nowadays we see all sorts of inclusivity, including curve girls that barely existed back then. People in wheelchairs, vertigo, like Winnie
Yes, like
Harlow.
Winnie.
You know what I
Wow,
mean?
yeah.
It's
It's
drastically
changed.
different. And now with AI, drastically different, using computer generated images instead of actual humans. Social media has created an oversaturation in the business of what I call tourist models, people who really aren't going to be fully invested in the grind and taking this as professionals. And there's way less money being spent. Back in the 80s, oh my gosh, there was so much money. So much money, but now, and I'm not getting into politics, I'm just stating fact, with the economy being funky, there aren't a lot of really nice budgets left in the
To
business
put into.
globally.
How would you say, I mean, you mentioned AI, and I know a lot of people are using AI to alter models' features and all of that. What is your take on that? And how is that kind of maybe made the industry, would you say it made the industry is kind of going the wrong direction? How do you feel about that since you've kind of been in there at the height of what it was and with all the everyone's just natural and you had to always kind of be on your A game and look the part versus kind of that AI coming in and can make you look how people want you to look?
For me personally, I think AI visually, like in my business, is horrible. It's absolutely horrific. Now, that being said, I use Chat GPT throughout my day.
Me too. I'm definitely guilty. It's become my
So
friend. I'm
I
like,
don't
okay,
want
this
to
is too
say,
much.
let me, to be specific, just in the fashion business is what I think is horrific about it, because already we have a very toxic standard of beauty, the ideal beauty of
Yes.
this super skinny, very perfect kind of aspiration for human beings aside from models. So I just think it makes it even more twisted, more toxic, because as as it might be aspirational, it's highly unlikely anybody's going to look like that. Like, let's see human
Yes.
beings is my point. I want to see humans.
Who
I
you
want
really
to
are.
see their soul. I think it's just sucked the soul out of the business.
I kind of want to dig in a little bit more to your experience and you starting Aria. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah,
Modeling
thank you.
agency. Just want to make sure.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell us a bit about that? How did you get to that point, and what made Aria different from other agencies at that time?
Okay, we'll take this in pieces. So, I'm sorry, the first question was why I opened Aria.
Yeah, what made
Okay,
you become from
so,
being an agent and then saying, "Hey, I want to do my own thing here. I want to start my own agency." How did that come about?
well, I've been very vocal, so I'm not spilling any tea anybody couldn't have already read about me. I spent a total of 7 years as Elite Chicago, and I had gone from being in the honeymoon phase when we became Elite. I was definitely part of the cult and thinking Elite was the only agency in the world. And I was totally devoted to that brand at that time. I thought, if this is the agency business, I don't want any part of it. So I quit in late 1989 and I opened up a little scouting and coaching business called Model Futures. And I had that for 2 years. And the models that I would scout kept coming back, that I would place with other agencies, would come back to me asking me to open up an agency. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. But then this woman, Mary Boncher, who had a really successful commercial agency called Mary Boncher Model and Talent, she asked me to become her partner.
Hmm.
And about what made us different, I said, Mary, the only way I'll go back into the agency business is absolutely no funny business with our models having to endure sexual predators in the agency, around the agency, client affiliation. It has to be a G-rated agency. She said, oh, of course, 100%. I said, the models have to be paid on time and quickly. We would advance the models instead of them having to wait 30, 60, 90, 120 days. And I said, it has to be a good vibe. It has to be a happy, non-toxic environment. And that's what we created when we opened up Aria. And it was amazingly successful for 13 years. And then Ford New York was having trouble with their Ford Chicago office, getting some street credibility. They tried because they had bought David and Lee.
Okay.
And made it Ford Chicago. And they just couldn't get it to really
find the secret sauce to make it work. Yeah.
So John Kaplan at the time, who was the CEO of Ford New York, kept bugging me and my business partners to sell. And so finally, as the expression goes, they made an offer we couldn't refuse. And my staff at the time thought, we want to be Ford because that creates a network that before we were neutral and we could work with anybody we wanted with no specific alliance. But they thought if we become Ford, that gives us a whole nother level of global mobility. So I finally acquiesced and sold in, I think it was 2003.
I love that. I love how you created a safe haven for models, how you've challenged the status quo and made it so that everyone kind of wanted to follow in your footsteps. I think that's so amazing and such an amazing story to tell. I'd like to know about your obstacles. What would you say were the biggest obstacles that you've encountered in your career?
Oh, in my career?
Yes. And how did you overcome those obstacles?
God, there were so many. I would say initially was being based in Chicago. And at that time, the clients, even in 1992, when we opened, the clients were still on the more conservative side. I had made inroads, but not as much as I wanted. So that was a challenge. The challenge was finally Chicago was starting to understand the concept of editorial models, meaning not just white sweep, very traditional type of models where they would shoot in the studio. They started to appreciate models working on location. So I started sending a lot of my models down to Miami and building their books there. And then they would come back to Chicago. And finally, the clients were starting to see, oh my gosh, they can move. Oh, we can go on location in Chicago as long as it's warm.
Right.
And it's not raining.
Instead of winter and windy, it's a little bit challenging, but it definitely is done. I have been part of those photo shoots.
So that was a challenge that I met and found solutions to. I think also as a woman, that was definitely a challenge. As a female, there was a lot of kind of pushback from men at the time in the business because it was back then it was more male dominated. And so I would be in meetings, and as a general experience, I can't speak for any other agent, as a general experience, men tended to be condescending and gaslight me. And so that was very triggering for me. But all the more reason it made me even more stubborn to accomplish my goal. Another challenge was I just didn't have enough time in the day to educate models on basics. So back at Elite Chicago, I wrote my first book on how to become a model that was published worldwide with Cindy Crawford on the cover.
Amazing.
And then when I had Aria, it was still the same thing, but the business had already changed a lot. So I was like, okay, so I'm challenged with educating my models. So I wrote the second book that was then published worldwide. So there were always challenges, and I was always attempting to get past those challenges and have solutions for myself.
Do you feel like it's not what it used to be? Some of those men that, were condescending in the past or chauvinistic, has that changed? Has that lightened a bit, or are you still finding the same people exist, the same players, just new faces, new generation?
Yes, it's very much an ongoing challenge. And I'll give you a case in point. I swear to you, this is a true story. I'm not going to divulge which agency, but after I had sold Aria, and I was living in Scottsdale. There was a top agency in LA that had flown me into interview to work at their agency. And the head person from the New York office had flown in. So I was meeting with the owner of both the LA and the New York office. We were having lunch, the three of us. And the guy from New York said, right in the middle of lunch, he said, "Marie, you've got a reputation for being a bitch."
What?
Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
And just to say that, like, hello, pass the coffee,
And he said, but in your defense, Marie, if you were a guy, you would just be called a great businessman.
Right. It's such a double standard. So you can't be a strong woman who's a boss without hearing some of that. Oh, you're a little too aggressive, or kind of, always that need to put women sometimes back in our place. But
yeah,
it's sad that still exists. But your testimony is definitely something to encourage women and to know you can hold your own. You can make change in the industry and just keep true to like your morals, your values, and continue to push forward and challenge the norm. And that can be done. So I'd like to learn more about your current company, one of your probably many current companies and endeavors, Boss Babes. How does Boss Babes differ than when you were the owner of Aria? Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with Boss Babes?
Okay, so to be specific, Boss
Babes.
Babe
yes.
models.
Yes. Boss Babe models, please correct me.
It's all about the individual babe being a boss.
Yes, that makes it stick for me. It's not all the babes, it's that babe. Right. You're that girl, you're that babe.
So to answer your question, Boss Babe Models is a one-on-one coaching service that I provide.
Okay.
I'm like rent an agent for an hour. So it doesn't matter if it's a child. Like just recently, I was working with a mom and a 6-year-old girl coaching, and they just signed with a top agency in Chicago. So essentially, I'm all that preparation for them to be taken seriously to then go and meet with agencies. So that's what Boss Babe Models is all about. And the difference is, and it's the same thing with my scouting and management company, which is Marie P. Anderson, separate. I don't book models.
Okay.
I place my models with agencies who book them and then give me a commission based upon the model's income for that year.
How can they start that process?
Well, they can go to my website, which is mariepanderson.com.
Okay.
And they can send me an email from there, or they can DM me at Marie P. Anderson Official, or my other Instagram account, which is Boss Babe Models. And I'm super accessible, as you know.
And from children up, there's no specific age?
No, from
young
literally
kids up to
6-year-olds to senior citizens. Because the business, as you had mentioned earlier, the business is not just about high fashion. There's a lot of work out there doing lifestyle, commercial, print, and TV commercials.
How would you say ageism has impacted the industry, and has it changed? Can you still be a top model and get work? Not talking runway, but what are the opportunities for those models that think, oh, I'm no longer 22, I've aged out, I can't do this? What would your advice be to someone who still looks fabulous, still has amazing style, still has that walk and just is that girl? What would you tell them if they want to kind of continue to model or seek those opportunities in the industry?
I would say go for it if they're ready to be on the grind and to diversify, because it's not just about being pretty anymore. It's not just about moving in front of the camera. It's about having a great personality, a sense of business, understanding that they have to invest some money in their company, that the agencies aren't going to pay them to do their testing. They have to invest in themselves. So there's, in my world, the way I've experienced, there is no such thing as too old anymore. That's just an archaic way of thinking about the business. And yet, not every agency represents more of a classic or sophisticated model.
There's a lot more diversity, and I'm so happy to see that, and that's still important, and that's something that you're still championing. So I'm kind of going to lighten it up a little bit. I have something I want to do called the fast fashion speed round. So I'm just going to kind of say something, ask you a question, and just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Just right off the top of your mind. Quick questions, quick answers.
I'm scared.
If it has to be not so quick, that's all good. Okay. So what would you say was some of the biggest mistakes that new models to the industry make?
And I'm just supposed to say one word?
No, you can say a sentence, but just whatever comes to your mind. Don't even give it too much thought.
The biggest mistake that they make is not understanding it is a business and they have to treat it like a business. It's not a party. It is first a business and then entertainment/modeling.
And is your reputation everything, would you say, in this industry?
Your reputation is 100%. For me, you have to have core values. Mine are integrity, faith, courage, and nurture. Those are my 4. So somebody has to establish their core values to even understand who they are. What is their core of what value do they bring? Are they making this world a better place to live? Why should clients hire them over the millions of other people that they could hire? Like, they have to get clear on the nucleus of the value of having them in the business.
Okay, that was great. Next question. Name one quality every successful model needs.
Courage.
Yeah, it can be a hard business. So yes, the courage to persevere. I think that's great. And then the last question, commercial or editorial?
For who?
Just what comes to mind? What's your preference? What's
Well, I come from the world of haute couture, so I would say editorial. That's definitely my juice, my jive.
So that's kind of the end of that game, but just diving into that a little bit more, because you've kind of had your hand in both sides of the business, right?
Yes.
Especially Chicago is also a big commercial market. How did you transition when we're looking for talent or working with models? Is there a difference as far as advice or just navigating the two different worlds? Is there certain lessons that are kind of just can be for both, or is it you're approaching it differently? What would you say kind of what the differences are?
As I've been listening to you, I've been reflecting back over the past 40 years of my professional experience in the business. And truly, I've been saying the same things for 40 years. It's not that complicated. It really, people come up with a million excuses of why they're not accomplishing their goals. And at the end of the day, they just have to be very focused and strategic about what they're doing.
Through all the lessons you've learned in your career and so many things and adversity that you've overcome, if you were going to go back to your younger days and go back and ask your younger self, young Marie starting out, what piece of advice would you give your younger self? What would that be, knowing all that you know today?
What piece of advice would I give my younger self? You will survive.
That sums it all up, because you're definitely a survivor. Your story is so empowering. I know we haven't seen each other face to face in many, many, many years, but we definitely have kept in contact or just connected on social media.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining me today and sharing
My
your
pleasure.
story so openly, being so authentic. Again, I started this podcast with saying, like, you just have a kind, genuine spirit. And when me starting this podcast, you're my second guest. I'm like, okay, Marie would be great. Marie would be great. And I really didn't have that much fear reaching out to you because I felt like at the very minimum you respond to me, which is with your resume and all the things that you've done. A lot of people like, oh, she sent me a message, just peek and ignore. And not you. I mean, you just had the amazing follow up. Everyone is, the same and special to you, and you give that attention. You don't make people feel like they're not important enough to be in your grace. So I just want to really thank you and applaud you for that. I think that's just so amazing to know there's people like you that exist and hear your voice and get a little extra word of encouragement. So everyone, thank you so much for listening to From the Front Row. Raw truth, real style, no filters. Until next time, keep striving, keep pushing, and don't wait for permission. Claim your seat at the front row. Thanks so much, Marie. I really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure, sweetheart. God bless.